Hi, it's Sean Bobbitt here. You're listening to the Cinematography podcast. We just wanted to sort of highlight the fact that this was a place of peace and tranquility, acceptance, but also bonkers madness. There are all sorts of statements being made about humankind, and it was that, and also the humanity and the humor that I read in the script that really attracted it to me.
This is Cinepod, the Cinematography podcast, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Hey, I'm your host, Ben Rock. Today on the show, I got to interview Sean Bobbitt, the DP of 12 Years a Slave, Judas and the Black Messiah, and his currently in theaters movie, 28 years later, The Bone Temple, directed by Nia DaCosta. Definitely check it out. Loved it, loved it, loved it. In this episode, you'll learn about Sean's approach to horror, which is shaped by his past as a news and documentary cameraman, his frequent collaborations with director Nia DaCosta, and their fascinating history together, honoring the look of the 28 franchise while carving out a look that's entirely new, creating a unique movement style while using the airy Trinity system, which allowed for stabilized 360-degree fluid movement and kind of blew my mind. It's not often I hear someone doing a thing with a camera that I'd never heard of before, but here you go. After the interview, stick around for our short ends, our pet obsessions of the week. But first, find out what's going on in the world of entertainment in a little segment that we like to call Close Focus.
Hey there, Ben. It is time for our Close Focus. It's what's going on in the world of entertainment. What's going on this week?
Well, it's something you and I were kind of talking about before we started here, and that was the unexpected box office success of not what you think I'm going to say, but a movie called Iron Lung that came out this past week and was number 2 at the box office. So Sam Raimi's awesome, go see it right now, movie Send Help, which I've seen twice. That was number 1 at 19 million. Iron Lung was number 2 at 18 million. Iron Lung, a movie with, I had seen barely any trailers for it, and they were ones I had sought out online. I didn't see them running before other movies. I didn't see billboards. I didn't see posters in the lobby. So what explains this? Well, the director / star of the movie is an extremely popular YouTuber named Markiplier, aka Mark Fishback, and this has kind of been his passion project to put this together for a few years. I heard him interviewed on The Town the other day. It was a very interesting interview, but the long and short of it is he hasn't said exactly how much, but it's been speculated approximately $3 million of his own dollars to make the movie, and he's self-distributing it and in essence taking a 50-50 split with theaters. So theaters are getting a good deal, and honestly, he's getting a good deal. It means that he's way in the black already on this thing. And it reminds me a little bit of the success of like Terrifier 3, where a movie with basically no marketing that the general public sees kind of sneaks up and ends up making, in that case, it was tens of millions of dollars on a relatively modest investment. But you were talking about an article that you read about Sundance and sort of the creator economy invading Hollywood. And I got to say, even though one could argue that the creator economy is only the creatorverse, the creator world is only possible because of the tech world, I support this so much more than all the tech companies coming in and taking over the studios. I at least the creators are the actual creative people. And, when they apply themselves and figure out how to get their stuff out there, they can be reasonably successful at it. As we've seen with movies like Talk to Me, which was also done by YouTubers. And I would bring up Shelby Oaks, which was directed by YouTuber Chris Stuckman. It did okay. It wasn't a runaway hit, and I actually liked it. I thought it was okay. I think that Iron Lung might be sort of up under the microscope anyway, in terms of how somebody with a massive audience of their own can basically just take their audience and incentivize them to go check out their movie. Not unlike Taylor Swift. It's just it's a different approach.
Yeah, it's exactly like Taylor Swift. In fact, you name checked all the references I was going to bring up in the same conversation, including like Talk to Me, because there are people out there who have followings, and they're kind of proving that they can make something and get people to turn up. This article that you teased, which we were talking about just before getting on here, is called "The First Post-Studio Sundance Film Festival." It's on IndieWire, and it's written by Dana Harris Bridson, and it's a really sharp article written basically about as acquisition has slowed and, the gatekeepers have hesitated. Her thesis basically became that creators, brands, and filmmakers have began renegotiating the business in real time. And in there, she essentially kind of distills it down to one sentence, which I feel like is more or less accurate. I don't entirely agree, but for the most part, she says that almost everyone knows that nothing in entertainment and media works how it used to, and there's no going back to normal. But we've reached a point where all factions, filmmakers, producers, platforms, brands, distributors, creators, financiers, marketers, are all staring at each other and trying to figure out what everyone is supposed to do. Now, I don't think it's quite like that. I think there are several people with strategies. There are people who are going forward and making things happen. It's just that the land under their feet have shifted, and it's shifted in a really real way. I can't help but think about, the same way that cable TV came in and rewrote all the rules, and the same way that home video came in and rewrote all the rules. There's so many times that this has happened in the past. It's just now it's a non-tangible and sort of every man for themselves sort of, free for all that is really disrupting what used to be the standard way that people did business, sold shows, and the role of film festivals. I still think film festivals have a role. I still think that festivals like Sundance will continue to have a role. But
people love film festivals. I mean, the thing is, if you're listening to the sound of my voice and you haven't been to a film festival, go to one. Chances are, if you live at least near a mid-sized city, you've got a film festival there at some point in the year. It's definitely worth seeing. It can be very, very exciting. I grew up in Orlando, Florida, and went to film school there. And we had the Florida Film Festival, which I think at the time I was like, oh, it's just my hometown festival. How good could it be? And then after going to a bunch of other festivals, I'm like, actually, Florida is one of the best. I think it's an amazing festival, but there's so many good ones, and the point of a film festival isn't just to sell. If all you're about is sales, then there's really only there only ever were about 4 festivals that ever mattered, and they were ones you couldn't get to anyway. You would be lucky to get into Sundance or Berlin or Toronto or Cannes. Those are the places where you're going to sell. And only, a limited number of movies go to Cannes, especially. And, but there is the Cannes market and the AFM and those things, which are about packaging a movie with Michael Paré in it or something, because it has
less so these days. Yes, but you're right.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Finding someone who has enough of a name value that they can slap their name on a piece of key art and people will check it out. But in streaming days, a lot of that has changed because, you'd always hear about people selling schlock ass movies to Germany and Spain. And I'm like, I know they have taste there.
They're not buying those so much anymore. The world has really shifted. Those sorts of foreign pre-sale financing, that doesn't happen the way it used to. What I think is particularly interesting about what's happening right now is that there's essentially a stranglehold on buyers for the traditional distributors and for the traditional streamers. There's really few people, and they have decided that they don't really want to acquire very much. They want to be very strategic, just the same way they haven't wanted to produce very much. And frankly, when I hear about theaters being in trouble, it's not that they're in trouble because people don't want to go to the theaters. They have a supply problem. There's a real supply problem of what's going into theaters, which I actually think gives people like Markiplier, Iron Lung, real chances to get in. Because if you think about just going back a few years ago when there was way, way more stuff being made and way more screens being filled up, it would be so much harder to get real estate, to get that time.
Yeah, the theaters could have played much more hardball, or the studios could have just shut him out because they were booked way ahead of time. I think you see a shred of this now when you hear about something coming out on IMAX, and how not the last one, but the second to last Mission Impossible couldn't get enough IMAX screens because it was competing with Oppenheimer, and Christopher Nolan had already made a deal, yada, yada. That's what all theatrical was like for the longest time for so many filmmakers. And that's changed. But also what's interesting is that Markiplier walks in with whatever it is. It's like 30 million followers, and they have a parasocial relationship with him. And I know I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I was once up to direct a movie for the Smosh YouTube page, which had an enormous following, and they made 2 movies. One was for YouTube Red, so that was just kind of like an experiment YouTube was running. That was the one I interviewed for. The other one, which Alex Winter directed, friend of the pod, just didn't do well theatrically because nobody knew who Smosh was if you were over the age of 16 at the time, and I guess the difference is that maybe YouTube followers have gotten older. Now they have expendable money. They'll go see something in the theater. I don't know. What was interesting was listening to this interview on The Town. Matt Bellamy asked him directly, like, you already have all these followers. You make anything and 30 million people are going to watch it. Why do you need this? And he said, there's still that allure of the big screen. There's still something different about it. And when I was,
it's a social event. It's social. People are going to go hang out with other people who also like what you like. That's a big part of it.
And by the way, I full disclosure, I am seeing Iron Lung tonight. I haven't seen it yet, but I've been dying to see it. I've heard it's a little slow, but I've heard it looks great. I've heard that it's engaging, and it does feel a little. You can tell it was adapted from a video game. But maybe next week I'll give you my personal take on it. I'll probably post about it on Letterboxd after I see it. But anyway, I mean, like it really doesn't matter in that regard. I just think it's interesting to see sort of the marketing of theatrical taking a different, more social turn. And again, I link it to Terrifier, and Terrifier is less about, like, it's not out of the creator economy so much as it was about podcasts that launched that. And also, just kind of like the 2 previous Terrifier movies building this reputation for, like only the most extreme horror. And so in Halloween, people, that's what they wanted. Some people wanted that. Even as a massive horror fan, it's not necessarily the thing I run out the door for. But it's interesting to see. Also, I think that it's interesting that these people have chosen horror as the genre, and I it's probably because you don't need to have marquee names in it. And audiences, I don't want to say audiences are forgiving of horror, but if horror, I feel like we go to it for more experimental ideas than if it was a rom-com.
So I want to interject something here, that this is not actually a new concept. I know this has been going on at least since 2019 because there's a movie called Airplane Mode, which came out then. Airplane Mode was actually made by some of my clients, and it's not well regarded as far as rating goes. And this is not just me speaking. It's like, I think it's a sub 2 on IMDb, but it was directed by David Dinetz and Dylan Trussell, and it was shot by a longtime Hot Rod Cameras client, Colt Seaman. And the movie looks very good, and it has Logan Paul and a bunch of other, Casey Neistat and a bunch of other people in it. So, and it's a super like goofy, supposed to be like good time, not take itself very seriously type of thing. And if you're going in for that, maybe that'll be exactly, it'll deliver exactly what you expect. But I think that they made a boatload of money. I think they sold it on iTunes, if I remember too. So they did a bunch of stuff, and they got people to come out because, frankly, there was like 40 at the time in 2019, really, really big, YouTube people who were all in this. Now, granted, what I think is happening with Talk to Me and Iron Lung and some of these other projects is they're saying, hey, look, we're filmmakers. This is not just a cash grab to get people to come see their parasocial,
Well, like
crush.
when I saw Talk to Me, I had no idea who they were. I had never seen any of their videos, and I immediately fell in love with that movie. Like it's just rock solid, amazing filmmaking.
So what I'm thinking the future is going to be is that people are going to have somewhat of an audience, but there is platforms or things out there that are going to make it easier for someone who really does have the capabilities and wherewithals to make something to find their audience before they go into a theater. I don't think it's really there yet, but I think that's kind of like the next frontier.
I've seen attempts at that over the years, but it might have been waiting for sort of the creator economy to catch up with it because, YouTube has now been around for 21 years, launched in 2005. And there are people who grew up and that's all they ever watched. They were fine. My son, when he gets older, he will watch movies or TV shows or whatever, but he already has YouTubers that he watches. And I think that's pretty normal. And so as these people get older, and this is, like when I met with the guys from Smosh, Ian and Anthony, I kind of asked, like, what's the goal here? And they were like, well, we want to expand to a bigger audience, because like when they started doing it, they were teenagers and they were making basically sketch comedy for themselves and other teenagers and, tweens. And that's what Smosh had been forever. And then, as they got into their 30s, they wanted to appeal to people their own age and not keep making the same stuff. It's like, it's not even the first generation of YouTubers. Now we're like onto God knows which generation of YouTubers we're looking at. And people like Markiplier and Chris Stuckman and stuff like that, they know how to rally an audience. They know how to talk to their people. And, I'm just glad that the people are answering because I'm not going to name names, but, like I've talked to people who have like podcasts with enormous followings who are filmmakers who, when they make something and they put it out for free on the internet, they can't bribe their audience to watch it. It's like, hey, you are a fan of mine. The device you're listening to this on, tap this thing. And, you figure if they have, 5 million listeners to their podcast, they should be able to get 500,000 people to do that. And it's like 2,000 people do it.
Yeah, it's always,
conversion.
The conversion is going to be the real trick for all kinds of things too, because it's like, some relationships are casual, some relationships are serious, some are unhealthy parasocial relationships. Taylor Swift can rally a fan base like no other, and it's
when you have a fan base of that size, if 1% of them goes to your movie, that's still going to be that's going to be millions of people. I mean, that's what it comes down to is if you have a massive fan base. So, and Markiplier's got a pretty big fan base. But I think that he's also done a pretty good job of converting them to going to the movies because like he basically said that he was saying to his followers on YouTube, like, hey, go to your local theater and ask if my movie is going to be playing there.
Yeah.
And enough people did that they booked this movie that was originally going to be on 25 screens nationwide on 2,500 screens.
Wow.
And it's the number 2 movie in the country. And I'm all for that because, like the studios are great at certain things and not at others. And one thing they're not great at is like, hey, here's a fresh new idea by somebody who's never done this before. They're not going to get behind that.
Agreed. Well, I think that's all the time that we can devote to our close focus. We should get to our interview with Sean Bobbitt.
Here we go. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I feel like there's so much we could talk to you about, because you've had a pretty long and diverse career, and you've done so many cool movies, worked with Steve McQueen, and just amazing stuff. We're here to talk about the Bone Temple, but I might diverge and ask you some other stuff if that's okay. But let's get into the Bone Temple. The Bone Temple, sequel to 28, then 28 days, then 28 weeks, then 28 years later. 2 of those 3 directed by Danny Boyle and done. It's kind of funny because it's like 28 days later, shot on mini DV. 28 weeks later, shot kind of shot film. 28 years later, shot on an iPhone. Then you and Nia DaCosta come along and shoot the Bone Temple. And you do it. You tell me what led to the decision of how to shoot it.
Well, we wanted the Bone Temple to look very different to 28 years later. Mm. I'm not Anthony Dodd Mantle. I can't do what Anthony Dodd Mantle does, and what he did was nothing short of miraculous. And also, our story is very, very different. Although they're both written by Alex Garland, ours is kind of a unique love story in many ways. And it had a very sort of bucolic element to it. All the stuff with Ray Fiennes, he has created a world which the chaos moves around. And we just wanted to sort of highlight the fact that this was a place of kind of peace and tranquility, acceptance, but also bonkers madness. By using much more traditional cinematic techniques and a much slower camera. The camera still moves, but it does so in a very mannered way for most of that. In the early introduction of Samson, the Alpha, we've got a little bit more of that jaggedness to the movement.
You got like a body mount or something going on with him in a couple of shots.
Yeah. No, that's it's a customized body mount with a Sigma FP camera. I mean, right up next to his face and locked onto him. And we were looking for contrast in everything. So an immense contrast between the first film and our film, a contrast within the film between the life of Kelson, Ray Fiennes, and Samson, and then the Jimmies. So, just in terms of pure visual storytelling, we sort of broke them down into very different visual approaches.
In watching this, and I know that the 28X later movies are not technically zombie movies, but they operate like zombie movies in a sense. I know Danny Boyle's quick to say they're infected, they're not zombies. I get it, they're not dead. But I kept thinking, especially because I saw the movie the week it came out, and then I went and saw it. A friend of mine hadn't seen it before. I kept thinking while I was watching it the second time, and I believe it's a George Romero quote, but I could be wrong, about zombie movies. And he said that like zombies can't be the bad guys. They're basically just the weather. They're just bad weather. And the conflict all happens between the human characters. And I feel like this is a even within this franchise, probably it's not that it has the least threat from the infected. They can come in wherever, but you're right. All the people who are in this movie have figured out how to control it. And Ian, is it Kelson, the Ray Fiennes character, the doctor, has kind of figured out how to like basically make a sanctuary where they just can't get to him unless he wants them to. Was there a talk about or a discussion about like the unpredictability of the threat of the infected, or kind of their role, how you would photograph them differently than you would photograph the living characters?
Yeah, there is a tradition even within 28, the whole 28 sort of genre now, that when the zombies or the infected, although some people are now allowed to say zombie. I don't know if I'm one of those, but if the infected...
Well, somebody in the movie calls them zombies. So,
well, exactly. It's become a much grayer area because that sort of zombie canon has grown immensely since the first film. But the way they moved in the first film, in the second film, and also in, 28 years later, the first film, there is a jaggedness and speed.
Yeah,
and that's what we wanted to keep,
like a high frame rate.
Well, it's not even
not a high frame rate, but a shutter.
It's a shutter.
Angle.
It's a shutter angle,
yeah.
And we wanted to keep that as something that runs through all the films. So that was sort of our point of reference and connection to everything that had come before. So, but we played around with that frame rate. In interesting ways for different effects, because we would also use that then for the Jimmies when the Jimmies are fighting in very specific areas where it's where there's a very kinetic fight going on, because the Jimmies are just like the infected in their own way, and what we learned from this film is that the infection is an infection. That actually you can cure it, you can get beyond it, or at least we're given hope through Kelson and his experimentation on Samson, that actually the infected people aren't completely lost.
Yeah.
And in the same way, the Jimmies are completely bonkers. But, there is still humanity within them, which actually doesn't show very often or very clearly. But they too could be cured. So, in my mind, I mean, there's been so much written about it and so much psychological analysis of the film, which is always interesting because we just set out to shoot the script.
Mm-hmm.
The writer has those ideas. There are all sorts of statements being made about humankind. And it was that, and also the humanity and the humor that I read in the script that really attracted it to me.
Yeah, the humor goes pretty dark in places.
It's very unexpected, but very powerful because of the context in which it appears. And I think that's something that allows people to be more emotionally affected. If they're given that little break, a laugh, phew, something normal has happened. It's okay. Then people cannot be totally alienated by the whole film and just think, I can't take any more of this. I've got to leave.
There are scenes and it's specifically your compositions. I think the way you shot it that made the audience laugh both times I saw it. Specifically, I would say like the moment. Spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the film, go see the film. But
shame on them.
But early in the film, basically, Dr. Kelson figures out how to get a blow dart of morphine into Samson, the alpha, and then a friendship evolves. And Dr. Kelson, it's not everything about that character is unexpected. And one of the least expected things to me was his love of 80s music and, specifically kind of new wave kind of stuff, Duran Duran. And he's like singing Rio to Samson and they're dancing. And it gets a big laugh, them, or even just them. Actually, what gets the biggest laugh is just that shot of the two of them kind of sitting and looking off into the distance together like old friends. Because, if you were to make you can't imagine that in any other kind of zombie or zombie adjacent kind of movie. So was that in the script, or did you and Nia DaCosta work out those compositions? And was I feel like they're heartwarming, and that's why they're funny, because you don't expect heartwarming in this movie.
Yeah. No, a lot of composition. I have to go back because I said, that it was the script that attracted me to the film. It's actually Nia DaCosta that attracted me because, Nia is just such a great filmmaker. And her speciality is horror. My speciality is not horror. I am not a fan of horror. This is the first horror film I've ever done.
I don't know. I think it could be argued that 12 Years a Slave is a pretty horrifying film.
But it's real,
Yeah.
And
but I mean,
there's horror and there's horror. I guess.
It's not expressionism, but this isn't an expressionistic horror film. It has its moments with the fiery barn and all that stuff that feels like expressionism, but it's grounded in a real circumstance. It's grounded in reality.
Yeah, no, and the things, compositions. I mean, we went through and we shortlisted and we storyboarded a lot of the film, but at the end of the day, it's the location that dictates the frame for me. Yeah. And, I like to have a lot of prep and spend a lot of time with the director and talk and get their ideas and concepts, because that then informs everything that I do.
Yeah. So
that when we're on the set on the day, we see a rehearsal. And the rehearsal, when you bring actors into a scene for the first time, they bring what they bring. And that is a true joy and a real excitement about filmmaking, is you never can second guess what the actors are going to do. And what they do is almost invariably right. So, all of the research and the talking and the storyboarding and the shot list, everything goes out the window
Yeah.
as soon as you see a performance, and you immediately reassess everything. Plus, also when you're seeing rehearsals, they're in an empty hall, and for me, composition is about space and finding the characters in that space.
Yeah.
And finding the right composition for that scene, for those characters within that space. And a lot of that's very intuitive, and you don't see that till you're there on the day. And, a quick discussion with the director, and it's like, okay, I like this, I like this. I don't like that, I don't need that. Okay, let's do this. Bang, off you go. So, the location, I mean, we should talk about the location for the Bone Temple. I mean, it's a remarkable set.
How much of that is actually physically built? Like, is it all there, or
It
is
is complete. There is no CGI associated with that set or that location.
Wow.
And the designers, I mean, absolutely insanely beautiful and brilliant concept. But it was Gareth and Carson
Mm-hmm.
who, I mean, their concept from day one was just mind blowing. And the actual physical location they found to put it into was pictorially perfect. From anywhere you were in that location, you could create a beautiful frame.
Where was
And
it?
it was up in Yorkshire,
Mm-hmm.
in the sort of the Yorkshire Dales.
Did they leave it open
And
like the Hobbit sets so that people could go explore them?
no, unfortunately, it is a farmer's field, and he
Oh
wanted
man.
it back. So no, he just wanted his field back, I think.
I kind of wanted to ask you something kind of referring to what you just said. And if you don't have a specific example, it's okay. But I'm just curious when you say that, you and Nia DaCosta spent, a great deal of time storyboarding, shot listing, getting everything. And then like, let's say I don't know what's it. You get out to the barn and you've shot listed it, you've storyboarded it, and then you get in there and what changes the plan? Do you have a specific story of a plan that changed and like why it changed, why it ended up tweaking on the day?
Because there are stunt elements associated with the barn.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a location that we were able to access. And I'm not sure whether we even got to rehearse in there, but both myself and Nia had spent a lot of time on that location. And so we were able to break the story down quite carefully.
Mm-hmm.
But, even once you've broken it down and you think you've got the shots, until the actors come in and move through the set, you have no idea what it's going to be. And because we wanted to have a lot of movement within those scenes, anything to do with the jimmies, we wanted to keep it moving, so that when we stopped the frame, it was like a punctuation mark. Like, oh, fuck, it either becomes a jump scare or something horrible is being said or done. So, we don't actually create a lot of that movement till we can see where the actors are going to go. For example, Jack O'Connell developed a real liking for some hay bales
Mm-hmm.
that were just just on the edge of the set. And so he quite naturally positioned himself there for the whole of the skinning, for all sorts
Well, he's
of
like
stuff.
raised. I noticed he was always like raised up above everyone else, like especially in that opening scene in the swimming pool where everyone's in the pool, and it felt very
Yeah.
Clockwork Orange almost, having him like separated and away from everybody.
Well, he sees himself as the son of Satan, and therefore, and he is Sir Lord Jimmy. So wherever he can, he finds a throne to sit on.
Yeah,
And there were these hay bales that were just stacked up randomly, and that was his throne.
yeah.
So everything then had to change in relation to his position, so that we could keep him into the back of frame for as we're shooting the skinning, as we're shooting the knife fight afterwards. It's sort of things like that then they shift the emphasis slightly visually. But for me, that's the exciting thing,
Yeah.
is to figure out that change in real time and to get it right.
Well, I
And
mean, like, what's that process? I mean, I guess what I'm kind of digging for here is you've done a bunch of prep work. You've talked about how you're going to cover a scene or how you're going to shoot it. And then you get there and things change, which happens. And it feels like this is the kind of movie where things are liable to change because you're in nature for so much of it. Or at the very least, opportunities you hadn't previously thought of are going to present themselves and you're going to be like, ooh,
yeah.
we could be up on that outcropping or we could feature that rock or whatever it is. So like, do you and Nia Costa like break off, have a conversation? Okay, well, our plan wasn't going to work, but what if we cover it like blah, 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 and kind of plan it out? Like how does that work between the two of you?
Well, the most important thing is the rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the director, and this is the way Nia worked as well, is they would have the set to themselves. Everyone else would go away.
Including
They would
you?
be there, quite often including me. Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd be invited to stay. Sometimes I'm not. It doesn't matter to me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But then we're sometimes I'm called in to see a rehearsal first if something big has changed, so that after that rehearsal, Nia and myself would then discuss the change and how we would deal with it, so that we would then have another rehearsal for the rest of the crew to watch.
I mean, would you have like meaningful input? Like I'm just throwing this out there as something I've seen happen in the real world, where it's like, you have everything blocked a certain way, but this one actor wants to walk over here, and in order for them to do that, you're going to have to switch your coverage and light a whole area you don't want to see. So would you have like meaningful consideration to say like, hey, if they can only walk 5 more feet that way, that'll save us 6 hours.
Yeah, well, I attempt to prevent that happening by lighting the whole scene 360 degrees anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the actors can go wherever they want.
Oh, sweet.
And if they go,
so are they doing this on a lit set? Like you've already lit the set, or are
well,
they?
yeah. I pre-light every set if I can,
okay.
if there's time to do so, because it's just a much more efficient way to work. Because then, the actors can come straight out of hair and makeup as soon as everyone's gotten in, go onto the set, rehearse with the rough, the lighting that's there. And the lighting informs actors. That's why I don't light a set up to then grade it down.
Yeah.
I try to light it as it should be, so that, based upon what my understanding of the emotion of the scene is, in relation to the discussions that I've had with the director. So they come onto a lit set. They do the rehearsals within that light. And, and then when I'm watching that rehearsal, I'm also making note of where we might need to change a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here. But I hope to have it 90% lit. And then as the actors go off once the rehearsals are done, everyone's been briefed about the shots and the crew are given the floor, that's when we go in and fine tune the lighting.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it, I just call it area lighting. I try to get it so it looks real and it looks relevant to the scene. And you tend to work with the wider shots first. And then as you go into close-ups, I might move in a small light here, a small light there, to give me a little bit more shape or drop off or a backlight or a side light, all that sort of stuff. But I try as best I can not to spend much time doing the lighting once the actors have arrived. Because the key thing is performance. And, it's you want the actors to feel comfortable within the location and to feel that they can do whatever they need to do, so that they're not being restricted by lighting stands and, and bounces and this, that, and the other. And, so far it's worked for me. And
I would say so.
But, the discussion about shots, this is the 3rd consecutive film that I've made with Nia. So we've spent a lot of time together, and she trusts my eye. And so I coming from news and documentary, which was my background, where I did news and documentary for 20 years, where you have to break down a scene in real time as it's actually happening.
Yeah.
It is amazing training for breaking down a scene that you've never seen before. So I can walk into a scene where I haven't seen a rehearsal, and as it's going on, I can be breaking down it into shots. Especially because I've got a script. I've been working on that script for months.
Yeah.
I know roughly what's going to happen. And having discussed with the director what the key elements of the scene are, I kind of know what the key things we need to get. And so by the end of that rehearsal, I've got a whole series of shots in my head, which I can then discuss with the director. And all directors will say yes or no. I like that. I don't like that. What about this? Oh, I've noticed this. This is now important. So,
Yeah.
you reach a consensus understanding of what the shots are. And as we're doing the shots as well, I've always got my mind open for changes. Because sometimes you're in a shot, and as the performance develops, one of the actors does something slightly different. And it's like, okay, well, we don't have that in the other shot. Is there another shot we can do which can go in as an independent shot? Because we don't shoot coverage. I mean, that I find the word coverage makes me slightly ill.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I mean, of course, there's the school of thought of hose it down and, get a master and overs and yada, yada, yada. And then there's like the Guillermo del Toro school of like, make sure they intercut, but you're never leaving. You're not going to always come back to a shot once you've left it, or each one is there to kind of serve a purpose. And, I kind of get both. I mean, obviously like coverage works for efficiency, coverage works for conversation, dialogue scenes. And you've got some beautiful dialogue scenes in this movie.
Yeah. Well, the problem with coverage is that to do it in the sort of TV way, you need multiple cameras.
Yeah.
If you put multiple cameras in, each camera is compromising the shot of each other camera.
Yeah, yeah. And the light and lighting too.
And
you have
lighting
to light,
as well. I don't want to do that.
Was this all one camera? Were you on one?
This is all one camera.
Even in the action stuff?
Most of the action stuff as well was one camera. Yeah.
Nice.
Because I operate.
Oh, wow.
And for me, operating is the really fun part. I don't want to give that away to someone else. I want to have some fun, So people talk about, the efficiency of coverage. It's not at all efficient, because what you end up with is hours and hours of shots, of which, 75% are not going to be used. So that's not efficient. It's but it also it means that the story is found in the edit, not in the shoot, and because of that, I think a lot of things start to look like a lot of other things.
Oh,
because
for sure.
That approach, you can only do it a certain way, and it really does not allow a lot of that continuity of movement that we tried to get into the Bone Temple.
Okay, I want to drill down on this because this is fascinating to me, and I love hearing this. And so I don't want to insult any of your work by calling it coverage at all. But there's a big scene between Ray Fiennes and Jack O'Connell. Jack O'Connell has convinced all of his followers, the Fingers, that Ray Fiennes is the devil, and he's going to go. And it's his father, and he's going to go talk to him. And Ray Fiennes is a doctor, and he has no idea that any of this is happening. And then Jack O'Connell, who is intriguing and terrifying in the movie, just shows up at the Bone Temple, and it's a long dialogue scene that's very philosophical, but also has some of the best written exposition I've ever heard, because it feels like what people would say when they first meet each other, but also every piece of it reveals and reveals and reveals and kind of unravels the onion of what's happened to Jack O'Connell's character between the opening scene of the first movie and him showing up in this. So, but it's dialogue. So you're going to have, corresponding shots of one and the other. How do you think about it? Is it broken into beats? Is it broken into pieces? I'm sorry to use the word coverage, but are you doing a master of the whole thing, or have you and Nia DaCosta like figured out how you're going to shoot specific sections of it?
It's all single camera.
Mm-hmm.
And there has been extensive discussion beforehand about what we would desire it to be. And there are wide shots that cover the whole scene. But part of something like that is the simplicity
Mm-hmm.
of the cinematography. It doesn't have to be clever. I mean, what I try to do is to use the location. So we have them sitting up on the hill on the Bone Temple. What's really interesting from that position is the river beyond them and the trees. So, we very quickly decided it's going to be 3/4 back. Now, you could do 3/4 back, but to keep with two cameras, but to keep the eye lines tight, one camera has to become compromised.
Yeah.
So we would run the whole scene from each camera setup and multiple takes of each scene. So that first off, you give the actors the continuity of performance through the whole scene.
Yeah.
So, and by just having one camera on, then the other actor has a chance to not relax. I mean, these people are real professionals, but they know they're not on camera.
Yeah.
Although you have an over the shoulder, there's always a hint of the other person there. They're not in full performance mode, so they can rest.
Mm-hmm.
So, that way you're not burning the actors out on every single take by having them, at full level of performance. And each actor feels that the director is only listening and watching them. So, which psychologically I think is quite important. Because again, they know that they are on camera for the whole time when they're on camera.
Yeah.
So they perform at full force the whole time. You put multiple cameras up, and one actor might suddenly start to slip a little bit and, lose interest. The director can't watch both of everything. So, multiple cameras, yeah, if that's the way you work, great. It works for a lot of people. It just doesn't work so well for me.
I always wonder about that. Like when you see like Ridley Scott with a bank of seven monitors, I'm like, how can you can't pay attention to any one of them, Well,
these are exceptional people though.
Yeah.
And
he still only has two eyes. I mean,
well,
he's obviously a genius, but
Yeah, but he'll be looking at the performance he wants at that time in the scene.
Yeah.
And then in the edit, he'll see all the other bits.
Yeah, yeah.
So, there are different techniques and they're all as valid as each other. And I'm very lucky that most of the directors I work with, they just want single camera.
Well, let me ask you about your approach to horror. Cause you said, again, like, I would say that, 12 Years a Slave definitely put me in a place that horror movies would put me into emotionally after seeing it. But like, you're saying you're not a horror person, but this, you've done, like you said, 3 movies with Nia DaCosta. That's kind of her wheelhouse. Obviously you wanted to work with her, but coming to horror from not a horror point of view, and I feel like a lot of your work is very naturalistic. What attracted you, besides getting to work with someone who you love to collaborate with? What drew you to work on this and to kind of build on the canon of something that is, I would say this is not the most horrifying. This is maybe the less capital H horror movie of the series, which isn't an insult at all. It's very introspective and thoughtful, but it's definitely there. There's that scene where Samson goes through the train compartment. There's that scene early on where the three people are in the woods and infected or just pouring out everywhere. There's plenty of that. And then of course there's all the stuff with the Jimmies, which again really reminds me of like the Droogs in Clockwork Orange. I couldn't stop thinking about that. Like a lot of that is the trope of horror, including that scene in the barn, which kind of almost edges onto like a Rob Zombie kind of a horror movie. Like it's pretty, like as a viewer, I'm like, what am I going to be asked to watch right now? It's pretty intense.
Yeah. When the first film came out 28 days later, I did watch that because it was, just so different when it came to horror films. And also fast-moving zombies.
Yeah.
I mean, that is really cool. Plus, that sort of post-apocalyptic world that Danny Boyle created and which Anthony Dodd Mantle filled was really attractive. And also the concepts of using prosumer cameras as a way of bringing the audience into a visual world that was so discordant, but actually kind of touched the world that people are in was really interesting. And, the performances, everything about it. It's one of the few horror films that I didn't find that horrific, but found fascinating. Because it was the movement of the zombies that caught me. Or the infected.
I get it.
And it was just, that was, it was exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also there was also a very human story going on there, of the survival of this group of lone people, and then the horrors that they're visited, much like our film is as well, the horrors that are visited upon them by other humans. It is, there was a resonance to it. As a news cameraman, as a documentary cameraman, I did, hard news and hard documentaries. So I covered a lot of war zones and conflict and civil wars and this, that, and the other. So horror to me is a real thing.
Yeah.
It is actual dead bodies and the horror of what humanity can do to each other. That is embedded in my soul forever, what I've witnessed. I don't want to go to a cinema and be presented with horror. Horror as entertainment. I don't find it entertaining. But it means, though, that I do, because I've filmed it in real life, have a really sort of sick capacity to make it look beautiful. And an ability to kind of shut it off as to what it actually is.
Is making it beautiful like a way of coping with it? Like, a way of like, I'm seeing a crime scene here, but I found this angle that's really, that really draws me in.
I think, it's my job, but also it's an escape. I can fall back into the technical, into the compositional, into all of that, and think, okay, I don't have to deal with, the supposed reality. There's a lot of people have asked me, how did you deal with, say, for example, the whipping of Patsy, which, I mean, that is a truly horrific thing in 12 Years a Slave. And I said, well, it's a movie.
Yeah, it's done safely. No one's really being hurt. It's just performance.
No one's being hurt. It's a performance, and it is an amazing performance.
Yeah.
And so, no, it doesn't affect me. I was not traumatized by that because I know it's not real. If people look at something that I've shot and they think that it's real, then great, I've done my job.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's not real. It's a movie.
Yeah. But I mean, like I want, what you're saying kind of reminds me a little bit of like the legendary special effects makeup artist, Tom Savini, who was a combat photographer in Vietnam. And then, 5 years later, he was in America doing George Romero, doing Dawn of the Dead and stuff like that, making body parts and doing all this stuff. And I feel like, someone should make a documentary about Tom Savini. He's a fascinating guy, but it's like,
Yeah.
is it, I feel like he was purging that, like he had the eye. He's like, no, that doesn't look real. That looks real.
Yeah.
And in your world, coming out of documentary and news, like, when you're setting up a moment of, horror, spectacle in this movie, yeah, of course it's stunt people and makeup effects. And, the guy playing Samson is, drinking a Starbucks between takes or whatever. But like when you're there in that moment, like what's triggering in your mind? Are you thinking about like when you saw something like that, how did you photograph it? Or is it just the same thing where you're like trying to find the frame, you're kind of deferring to the technical part of it and making the scary thing beautiful?
Yeah. No, I think so. I mean, if it doesn't look real, I'll say it doesn't look real.
Yeah.
If it's related to anything that I might have seen in the past. But it's a displacement. But we all got to keep ourselves sane somehow. And it's it's a job.
But let's talk a little bit about your collaboration with Nia DaCosta, because that was the first thing that you said about it. Tell me about like how the two of you collaborate and what it is about her as a director that attracts you to working with her, even outside of the genres that you tend to work in.
Well, the first time I met Nia, I was doing a pilot for HBO directed by Steve McQueen. And Nia was still, I think, at film school in New York and was working as a PA, and she would drive me to and from the set every day.
Oh, wow.
And we used to talk about films, and like every good student film director, she had a film that she had written and she had a cast, and she was going to raise the money and shoot one of the scenes and then use that to raise the money to shoot the film. You hear a lot of that, but Nia actually did it. She went out and did exactly that and shot Smallwoods, which is a really good film. And I had seen, Smallwoods and, remembered the time with Nia. And when the Marvels came around, the Marvels had been, well, what are they called? Marvel itself, the studio, had been pitching me films for a number of years, and I have no interest at all in doing a big blue screen action thing. It's just not my genre. So I've been turning them down. It was just, COVID was still ongoing. They pitched the Marvels to me. I did a Zoom call with them, not knowing who the director was. And there was all these producers. In the middle of them was Nia, just sort of waved. And I thought, yeah, okay, I'll do this.
Oh, wow.
Because, you have to respect someone who actually goes and does it well. And her meteoric rise is really well deserved. She's a great director, she's a great writer, and she's just a great person. And, the sort of the epitome of collaboration is so, that the Marvels was not easy for anyone. I don't think any of those films are easy. And Nia approached it with a remarkable diplomacy and calm, whereas a lot of other directors would melt. She just carried on, and we all did the best we could. And, she was the best thing about that movie.
I always like to ask, like, when these movies come out, you do a lot of interviews and stuff, like, are there things people weren't asking you about or things that you haven't spoken about in other interviews that you feel was like a big achievement or like if you have any specific stories of like a big obstacle that you had to overcome, it could be the weather. It could be, your light on the techno crane or something went out at the wrong time, whatever it was.
I usually try to forget the trauma of a film. So it's, there were some very specific things that we wanted to do technically. We wanted to create a new way in which the camera moves, so that with the infected and with the jimmies, when they're fighting, that there's something that's different, and no one has noticed that there is this, which I think makes it very successful. But we took a camera system called the Trinity, which is a remote head mounted upon a Steadicam pole, effectively, and it means that you can move anywhere in space, from 2 inches off the ground to 8 feet in the air, and anywhere rotationally. I mean, it is a remarkable piece of equipment.
Powered by what? Is it cables? Is it a crane? Like what?
No, it's a Steadicam rig. It's a Steadicam vest and a Steadicam operator, except the arm has plunked on top of it a cage, which is gyro stabilized, and the camera's within that cage. So it goes up, it goes down, it goes left, it goes right. It can go anywhere you want it to go, and so you get just the potential of endless movement. And that movement can do 360 degrees because you have no base. And it's not like a techno crane or any other system. But it is more stable than a Steadicam because the actual head is gyro stabilized as well. But it also has that ability to go up and down, to jib. So it's a remarkable piece of equipment. And we, myself and the operator, I work with Simon Wood, who is, in my mind, the best Trinity operator in the world right now, simply because we've done 3 big films.
That sounds complicated and also just heavy to operate.
I don't know. That's up to him. He doesn't complain, so I don't.
So how did that movement manifest?
What we did is we got together and because handheld is very specific. You can do it really stable, but there's still going to be a movement, and that movement is very specific as well. It's a bit like that because everything is centered over the shoulder. What we wanted was something that was like handheld, that had the flexibility of handheld, could get in the same places of handheld, but was gyro stabilized.
And that's in all the scenes where the infected and the jimmies are fighting, or just the infected, or?
Well, it's the jimmies as well as the infected fighting. Some of that is handheld, but some of it is very specifically a rig that we call the Simon. Because it was Simon's camera. But what we did was take the rig and bastardized it, and effectively just took away a lot of it and plonked it onto the top of a Steadicam. So that Simon was operating it like this on a Steadicam, so it could move up and down, left and right. But because you've got it, the way the gyros are set up to do something else, it did this odd little quirky move thing, which was just fantastic. So
now I got to go watch it again, which I totally will.
Yeah, and I think we were successful because no one noticed it, but it is a very unique way of moving a camera. And what is very cool about it is that it's all jerky as you're moving it, and you do a whip pan and stop, and just for that split second, it's absolutely stable. So you get these really cool zoom, boom.
Oh, I know. Yeah, now that you're saying that, I think I know the shots you're talking about.
Yeah, and there's no other way to do it. So, for us, that, and we try to find something different in every film. And we also created this enormous wire rig, so that in the woods, when the chap is being chased by the zombies and attacked, we wanted to be able to get a shot that was locked to his body as he's running over uneven ground. which then the camera, he would stop. The camera came off of that rig and went into handheld.
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That like Adolescence. I don't know if you ever saw Adolescence, but like
Yeah.
that series is like lousy with like, okay, that handheld shot is now a drone. How did that happen?
Yeah. No, and it's things like that. Again, the audience will never know,
Yeah.
but it is something different. We found a solution to an almost impossible problem because the whole rig is connected to the actor who's also a stuntman. So he's pushing it and pushing the camera so that the distance stays exactly the same between them. And because it was a 2D wire rig, we could program it to follow the undulations of the ground. So instead of his head going up and down in the frame, the whole rig goes up and down with him.
Oh God, I need to see it again now.
And,
That's so cool.
it doesn't matter to the story. But, we set ourselves a task and we spent a lot of time to make it work. And although it lasts for only seconds on the screen, those are really satisfying seconds.
Well, and I feel like, every one of the 28 X later movies, like they all have a different look, but one of the things that I think that I expect from them is that they're going to be there's going to be ingenuity in the visual construction of it. Like each one has a novel visual approach and does some stuff that I'm, I'm thinking about that body mount on Samson. I mean, like, obviously we've seen body mount camera before, but it's like that kind of stuff that kind of like makes me lean in and go like, what's going on? What is that? Like I mean, to me, that's sort of a hallmark of the series.
Yeah. And, we wanted, and it was really Nia's desire for our film to be different visually from the first film. But at the same times, we want it to be that visually interesting. So that, again, there's a continuity, a visual continuity that runs through all of them.
Yeah.
And trying to, be as original as we can in terms of the storytelling.
There was one more question that I had for you that was about a light source that's mentioned by name so many times in the movie, and it's very important, and it's the moon. And I even noticed the second time that I saw it that there's a flashback where we even see a character reading a thing about the moon.
Yeah.
What was your approach to moonlight? And how to create it, how to simulate it, how to photograph it. There's so many different theories about how to, and there's a big full moon in this movie that fills the frame and we see the clouds drifting in front of it. Like the moon is definitely making a statement, an unbilled character in the film in a way.
Well, a full moon is a gift to a cinematographer because I try to motivate all my lighting. If it's a nighttime scene and you're seeing stuff in the background that's only lit by the moon, then a full moon, it justifies the fact that you can see beyond the lit foreground. Yeah. And so, for example, the Bone Temple, we lit that with one very, very large single source, which was on a very large crane on the top of a hill, which, was up where the moon would be. And it was I don't know, probably a 40-foot by 40-foot construction of LED strip lights, the very specific type. And if you place them exactly the right distance apart from each other and at the right distance away from the object, it creates shadowless moonlight.
Wow.
And for me, moonlight has a very specific color. It's a silvery blue-green. And I say to anyone who wants to be a cinematographer, you figure out what moon is for you. But I go out at night. I live out in the country. It's a full moon. I don't have a lot of light pollution. I hold my hand up and I look at the reflected moonlight on my hand. And with my eyes, what I see is a silvery blue-green. So that to me is moonlight. And that's nice. What I attempt to create. And because it's got just that little bit of green in it works as a great color contrast with warmer lights as well. so that you've got in the Bone Temple that fantastic firelight
Yep. That's
from that
exactly what you took me to when
360
you said that.
degrees. Yeah, and in the background you have that contrasted din with that blue green moonlight hitting the actual um, pillars themselves. So you get a wonderful color contrast, and that's what I'm always looking for, is lighting with color, and by using color create depth.
Well, cool. Well, I feel like I've taken enough of your time. I truly love the movie. I hope lots more people go see it. I think it's one of those movies people are going to return to. It's beautiful. Your work is beautiful. The actors' work, Nia DaCosta's work. Everyone should be proud of what they did. Before we go, do you have a website or a place where people can check out your work? Instagram, anything?
No,
You don't even have a website?
no.
I guess you don't need one, but
I, it's not that I'm a Luddite, but a lot of this technology, I don't see the need. I've got real friends. I don't need to have virtual friends.
yeah, no,
So I've never gotten involved in social media. I'd rather just have real social.
Well, I would encourage anyone listening to this to check out the Bone Temple, but also, you just have such an amazing, rich body of work that's worth checking out. And I'm sure that it's on all. I don't know where each one is on the streamers, but I'm sure that a lot of it can be streamed.
Yeah, no, it can be found, and I think in terms of cinematography, the real job of the cinematographer is to create a complete, believable world for that story.
Mm.
And so just looking at one shot or one scene kind of is irrelevant. I've over the years, people have said, "Oh, do you have a reel?" And I'd say, "No, I don't have a reel, but I can recommend you watch this film or that film." And you can see, the continuity of the cinematography
Yeah.
and the depth of the visual concepts. That's what's important. It's not a frame or three shots. It's the whole story. You said earlier that a lot of my films are very naturalistic, and that's what appeals to me, the real world, real people. But having said that, the Bone Temple hopefully is not the real world or the real people that are in our future, but that trying to make it as real as I can is what appeals.
Beautiful work on the Bone Temple. Definitely holds up for a second viewing, and I assume a third. I'll definitely be seeing it again. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So that was Sean Bobbitt. Sean, thank you so much for being back on the show. I'm glad that Ben got to interview you this time.
What a pleasure. What a wonderful guy. Just so much fun to talk to. He's one of those guys that just makes it sound fun.
For sure. All right. So Ben, it is our short end time of the show. It's the time we talk about pet obsessions. You have a variety of pet obsessions. What's yours this week?
Which one would you like me to talk about? No, I saw a movie ahead of its release, a movie that I don't know that I would have fought to go see in the theater, although it is a Dracula adaptation, and I just need to get some stuff off my chest about it.
Okay.
So it's directed by Luc Besson.
Oh, yeah. Okay. La Femme Nikita.
Yeah. La Femme Nikita, Leon the Professional, The Fifth Element. Shot by Colin Wandersman, who has not done a lot of American films. I think this was largely financed with French money. It stars Caleb Landry Jones as Dracula and Christoph Waltz as Priest. He's not Van Helsing, but he's kind of Van Helsing. Anyway, this is the most head scratcher of a Dracula film I've ever seen. And I have read the book Dracula, and I have seen God knows how many adaptations of Dracula in my life and spin-offs and whatnot. I would even throw things like Dracula 2000 with Johnny Lee Miller in that list. And about halfway through the movie, I'm like, who the hell is the main character of this movie? Because in the book, it's Jonathan Harker. In this, Jonathan Harker, the actor playing Jonathan Harker is fine, but he's kind of a third tier character in the story. I mean, like the actor's good. He just doesn't have as much to do. The Van Helsing-ish character played by Christoph Waltz doesn't drive the story. He's in a bunch of it, but he's also not in a lot of it. And I came to realize this is a movie about Dracula. Dracula is the hero of this film. Dracula is the protagonist. Dracula is the good guy. This is all about Dracula.
Wow.
He's not a scary Dracula, although he gets scary. He's in some makeup, but like you're not going to be frightened watching this movie for sure. It's a little bloody. It's got some special effects makeup. I feel like it owes more to Francis Ford Coppola's movie, which he called Bram Stoker's Dracula, but took massive, insane
Indeed.
liberties with the story. Like it's nothing like the story. Like the whole hook of Bram Stoker's Dracula, as directed by Francis Ford Coppola, is that Vlad Dracul lost the love of his life and has been looking and cursed God, and God turned him into a vampire. And he's been looking for the love of his life ever since. And then she shows up as Winona Ryder, looking exactly like the love of his life in ancient times. And that is the story here, right down to it being Mina Harker, also not the main character, probably not even introduced until halfway through the film. But it like takes us through time, and there's like these Barry Lyndon-esque sequences of Dracula through time, and like dance sequences and stuff. And it's like sumptuously art directed, which I guess you would be expected given that it's Luc Besson directing. The action is good, and it walks right up to the edge of being campy without actually committing to campiness. Like, for instance, we're used to in a Dracula movie having like Dracula has like 3 vampire women who taunt Jonathan Harker. Yeah, that's not in this movie at all. In this movie, Dracula has sentient gargoyles that run around inside the castle. It sounds like I'm making this up. And they're like, CGI stone gargoyles. Are they explained? Not exactly. I mean, there's sort of like I guess it was that thing that happens at the very end of the movie, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Anyway, I just it's funny because like, did I hate it? No, I didn't hate it. I was never bored. It's like 2 hours and 9 minutes long. It earns every second. I never was like, screw this movie, I'm leaving. Christoph Waltz is great as always. And honestly, kudos to Christoph Waltz for in under a year being in Frankenstein and Dracula. If he's in Werewolf, the new Eggers film, then I'll be like, wow, he hit the trifecta. That's like the EGOT of horror movies. But still, him getting in Dracula and Frankenstein, pretty cool. Is it going to do well? I don't see this being a hit movie, but what do I know? I thought it was interesting. It got a lot of laughs, and I believe we were laughing with it. It's weird. I'll just leave it there.
It sounds like it. Wow. Okay. For anyone out there looking for another Dracula film, take note.
Yeah. If you saw Nosferatu last year and you were like, I want a sexier version of that. A lot of the way we go with Dracula is to make him a sexy romantic lead, and this one like dials that up to 11. So wow, it's very interesting.
It sounds like it.
All right, so I'll stop yakking about that. What's your obsession this week? What are you all about?
I have 2, and they're kind of the same, but they're also completely different. So
please say Dracula.
It's not Dracula.
Oh, okay.
I went to 2 different events that are ostensibly Hollywood events, but they take place in very different places, have somewhat different crowds. But I'm going to do a quick report essentially on what I learned and what I experienced at both of them. Number 1, I went to an event called the Silicon Valley Video Summit, and I went 2 years ago. And the Silicon Valley Video Summit was kind of a sleepy event. I was there, and I remember thinking, well, okay, this is really interesting for people involved in in-house video production, which turns out was way, way bigger than I had any understanding of. And then there was a small sort of segment of stuff that was like part of the broader sort of like broadcast and for, cinema world. And I will say that those meetings in 2024, those conferences, those rooms, they weren't particularly popular, and they all seem to revolve around the idea of like, oh, AI's coming, and better not, devote too much time or attention to this because this is all going to get replaced by AI. AI is going to be the thing. This is just like 2 years ago. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, how out of touch is Silicon Valley really about this sort
now
of thing?
Now it's like, is the keynote speaker Claude?
That would be perfect, but no, it was not. This year, very, very different. So this year, the Silicon Valley Video Summit, it was much more Hollywood people. Some people I knew. I ran into several people I knew who were up there, and the conversation was all about, if you think that AI is just coming to take your jobs and that everyone's going to be watching AI generated movies, you're a fool, or you've drank too much Kool-Aid. This is not the reality.
Really?
And the audience was very receptive. I took a bunch of notes here. I actually could break them out, but saying things like creativity is the most important thing. Storytelling is the most important thing. Most important that people understand the tools how to use them and not try to, pretend that prompting and praying is not a strategy. No one wants to see prompt and pray. And that's what people are doing out there who all think that AI is coming for Hollywood and coming for, storytelling, which was so refreshing because here it was a whole bunch of people who essentially 2 years ago, it was a different tune. And this year, people from the ASC were there, people from other parts of Hollywood were there, and they were not the only ones saying that this is not the reality. There was people involved in big tech and big corporations who were like, yeah, there's a way that you can use the tools that are out there to try to massage and get further into what you want to do. But frankly, this is what people have been projecting and portraying Hollywood as is completely false. Now, they had some really incredible speakers there too, including Alvy Ray Smith, who's a co-founder of Lucasfilm's computer division and also Pixar. He spoke for a while. I got to meet him and talk to him. It was a fantastic conversation. Also, Guy Kawasaki, who's probably one of the most famous marketers. Of course, he might be most famous for being involved in the 1984 Apple Macintosh campaign and stuff. He came in, they both did keynote speeches, and it was a really, really improved event from 2 years ago. It was like a different world. So the very next day, I went to Production Summit LA 2026. I would tell anyone who is thinking that this would be the appropriate place for them, and you can find the information all about it on the Global Objects website. Global Objects, really cool studio, client of Hot Rod Cameras. I've been working with them for years. It's run by Eric Geisler and Jess Lauren. Both of them are super savvy, and they are sort of the driving force behind Production Summit. They are actually getting rubber meets the road people who are working in AI specifically, and also different forms of new digital media and workflows. And they have very, very specific conversations from people who are doing really, really high-end work for lots of different companies, like Kevin Bailey, who is the head of the studios for Eyeline Studios, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Netflix, which does tons and tons of VFX works inside of Netflix for Netflix productions. He spoke, I think, on at least 2 or 3 different panels and had really fascinating stuff, not only in how they're trying to make workflows more efficient and save people time, but then also how they're bringing in some AI tools and doing limited amounts of shooting of certain segments and assets so that they can then provide new training and new information to create ultimately very, very effective VFX work, which I think would have, they told some stories about stuff that traditionally would have taken 9 months that they were able to do in 4. And when you're able to do that, it was still the same number of people. It was still all the same people working on it, but they were just getting so much more accomplished.
I'm a broken record about this, but I feel like visual effects is obviously going to be the most changed by AI, but it doesn't go away. It's like, now, you have to know Maya and Nano Banana. Those sort of public models are not what most people are using, or if they're using them, they're only using them in limited capacity. So it's getting better, and it changes every 6 months. I met people who were basically heads of technology for Paramount and other studios, as well as the people from Moon Valley who are we spoke to Bryn and Paul from Moon Valley, and I would encourage anyone to go back and listen to that episode. Did you actually see them in person?
They were not there in person, but their like their tech people who were below them were there. And so I got to meet them. And we talked all about like, what the future sort of looks like. And it looks much, much brighter than I would say most of the people out there are trying to make it sound like, with AI coming to ruin actors and ruin, traditional VFX people's lives. And this was not gung-ho, rah, 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 isn't AI incredible? It was, look, I learned some very interesting things, including also that like there are people who've been involved with AI in one fashion or another since like the 80s. I was very, very pleased at both events, had really good conversations, and was and I'm happy to report that there is certainly some people who are conscious about the taxonomy of using the letters A and I together in anything these days, and that because it's such a hot button issue, that there are people who do not understand what that means, who think they understand what it means, and immediately will have negative associations with it. So we need to get smarter in Hollywood, and Hollywood does not have a particularly good track record with this because of
being
like
smart.
Of being smart, but particularly
we have a poor track record of smartness.
But particularly also with like taxonomy and vernacular, because it's like, the word filmmaker is thrown around the same way producer is thrown around, the same way now AI is thrown around. And it's not always about generative AI. There's predictive AI, there's statistical AI, there's a whole bunch of other stuff.
All it means is machine learning. And so, technically your spell check is AI.
We could be using machine learning, but I think it's going to take, as a group, as a culture, people getting together and calling it something else, because AI is so tainted now and so hot button that who knows what the future is going to hold. Anyway, I'm
for those two letters, but I
yes.
do know that we're all moving towards a future where everything we use will have AI in it, and 3/4 of what we use right now already does. Well, that's actually wonderfully optimistic.
I know. I was like, I expected to leave a little bit more doom and gloom, or to see something else that would make me say like, well, it's been a good run, hell of a ride. But no, it looks like, I think actually very optimistic about the future, and especially the people who are doing stuff. So if you are not familiar with Production Summit or the Silicon Valley Video Summit, then we'll put links over at camnoir.com to these things in the show notes, and you should give it a check. I hear Production Summit might actually come back in 6 months, just because things changed so quickly and there was such a huge response. Anyway, Ben, I think that is just about all the time we have for this show.
Good Lord.
Where can people find you if they want to track you down?
You can find me at benrock.com. That's the best place, and you can check out all my stuff. How about yourself, Ilya? Where can people find you?
You can find me at the sponsor of the show, Hot Rod Cameras, hotrodcameras.com, and also on the LinkedIns and the Instagrams. I seem to about 50-50 people reaching out to me that way. Yeah. All right. So who do we have to thank? Who made this show possible?
Alana Cody, our producer/editor. I'd say, probably spends more time editing, but her producing is what is the engine that keeps this show going. And she knew, by the way, about today's episode, that I would love to talk to Sean Bobbitt about 28 years later, the Bone Temple. And he did not disappoint. So I appreciate her for making that happen. And then we have to thank Kays Alatrakshi, who composed all the music. You can check Kays' website out at musicbykays.com. Hire Kays to compose a score for you, or do your color correction, or do some visual effects. Also, you can go to Kays Labs on YouTube and watch Kays fix synthesizers. It's pretty cool.
Indeed. All right. So, Ben, that's it for this show. You want to take us out?
Thanks for tuning in. This has been Cinepod, the cinematography podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory at hotrodcameras.com. Watch and subscribe to our show on YouTube, or listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow and interact with us on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn. But not X. Don't do that. Thanks for tuning in.